Objev kouzlo nového Pegasu. Pegas, ten nejlepší zážitek.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Prague. Welcome to the Opera Europe conference. I know that a lot of us are still in the foyer meeting friends, but otherwise we will start or we will not start ever. And we have a quite interesting program for today, and not only for today. So I am really glad that and happy that we can have conference face to face, and we can work in theater with our audience face to face. You are sitting in the new reconstructed State Opera Theater, what was opened in January 2020, and in March it was, according to COVID, closed for 2 years. So we have only first season here. So you can see practically everything new and not used. I would like to introduce you, my friends on the stage. Everybody of you knows Nicolas Payne, of course. Hello, Nicolas. Welcome in Prague. On the right side is Mr. Němeček, who is the deputy of the Minister of Culture of the Czech Republic, responsible for performing arts. Our minister apologized himself because he has to be on the meeting of government, but he will join our conference, and probably he will join us in Litomyšl during the weekend. And Boye Hansen, who is on the left side, is the artistic director of the opera, of the State Opera and National Opera. And my name is Jan Burian, and I'm general director of the National Theatre. Very briefly, I would like to orientate it where you are and who we are. The National Theatre is one of the biggest theatre producers in Europe. We have 4 or 5 ensembles together. About opera we'll speak pair, but we have also a strong drama group. We have a big professional ballet with more than 80 dancers, and we have also special organization named Laterna Magica for experimental theater. We are providing 4 important theater buildings. 3 of them are historical. The oldest theater, what do we have, is Estate Theater, established in 1781. It is one of the oldest theater until now working in the world, theater connected with Mozart and theater connected with classical opera. Then we have a building of the National Theatre, or historical building of the National Theatre on the bank of the river Vltava. This building is a symbol of Czech culture, and it played a very important role during our cultural renovation in the 19th century. It was opened 2 times, according to the fire between these 2 periods, in 1881 and 1883 again. Then we have quite contemporary building, a new stage where we are preparing big reconstruction in the soon future. And here you are sitting in the former Neues Deutsches Theater, what was opened in 1888, like a reaction of our German citizens on the new built Czech theater. This theater has very extremely interesting multicultural history. Per will speak about it. I will only notice that a lot of German citizens living in Prague until the start of Second World War has been Jewish, and all directors of this theater until 1938 were Jewish, in fact. Czech theater, we are of course, member of the big network of the Czech theaters. But we are only one theater subsidized by states, because almost Czech public theaters are subsidized by cities. We have together in our country, with 10.5 million inhabitants, 10 professional permanent walking opera houses. We have something around 40 public city theaters, and a lot of independent non-profit theaters, and also, of course, a lot of non-subsidized commercial theaters. For example, in Prague, we have 1.5 million inhabitants approximately. You can find up to 100 each day working professional theaters. Current situation of our theaters, I think, is very similar to the other countries. We are slowly starting to invite our audience, but we have no numbers what we were used to have before 2019. Special problem, for example, of this building is that we lost a lot of international guests, a lot of tourists. We have no tourists from Asia, from Russia, etc., who were used to go there. So we are actually planning less number of performances than before COVID. Because before COVID, we normally were playing some about 1,100 performances per year in their 4 buildings, with approximately 25 premieres. Economic situation in Czech Republic was before COVID extremely good. We had no high inflation, and we have practically no unemployment. Situation has changed very rapidly, and now we have inflation 16%, no unemployment, but for example, prices of energy are from 3 to 4 times higher than 1 year ago. It brings, of course, together a lot of problems, how to budgeting theater, how to support our arts, and of course it will be topic of the conference, so it is only for basic orientation. Finally, I would like to say that I am absolutely sure that we will survive this situation, because Czech theater survived communism and fascism, so we will also survive this extremely bad economic situation. And especially I would like to invite our friends of Ukraine who are with us, 6 of them here. I am very glad that they were able to come, and I wish you and them special successful conference. All the best. Thank you. Now I will give the floor to the Deputy of Minister, who has the speech of our Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was asked by the Minister of Culture of the Czech Republic, Mr. Martin Baxa, to convey to you his cordial greetings and to deliver his speech on this occasion. It has been 15 years since the major conference, Opera Europe, was last held in our capital city. Prague has changed considerably over the time, and I do hope that it has changed for the better. One example is the freshly refurbished State Opera, where we have converged today and of which we are rightfully proud. And I have been informed that you will also have the chance to look around the Rudolfinum Concert Hall, home of the Czech Philharmonic, as well as other treasures, not only in our capital city, but also in the city of Litomyšl, and I can only hope that you will enjoy your stay in our country. Unfortunately, we are meeting today in somewhat difficult times, which have affected us all. Over almost 4 months since Russian troops crossed the border into Ukraine, the armed conflict has claimed many lives and caused mass destruction. In these troubled moments, when Russia is committing gross violation of international law and assaulting a neighboring sovereign state, we are witnesses to a united and strong Europe and incredible solidarity of Europeans with the Ukrainian people. I'm therefore extremely pleased that the members of Opera Europe have also rallied in support of the Ukrainian people and theatres since the conflict began. Benefit concerts, patrons and donations from ticket sales are just a few examples of this solidarity. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your commitment to the cause. Together, we are striving to provide fleeing artists from various institutions with a safe space and opportunity to go on with their work. In the Czech Republic too, the culture and artistic spheres have taken immediate and spontaneous action and are helping with a range of urgently needed humanitarian aid such as accommodation and assistance for refugees. The Czech Ministry of Culture has established a coordination point to offer and meet the demand for aid for Ukraine. The Association of Professional Theatres has joined forces with the Embassy of Ukraine in Prague to help Ukrainian artists return to their professions as soon as possible. Together, they call upon their members and other entities to fly the Ukrainian flag on the buildings where they are based or which they use, as a symbol of inviolability of a sovereign state territory. I'm proud that Czech government has approved funds for sending shipments of materials which will help to save Ukrainian culture, monuments endangered by war. As our country prepares to take over the presidency of the Council of the European Union, we will be interested in holding talks with the European Commission about specific possibilities for helping Ukraine. We will strive to organize European expert teams for the preservation, rebuilding, and necessary digitization of physical Ukrainian culture heritage in cooperation with selected theatres, cinemas, museums, libraries, and other culture institutions. We will consider formally inviting the Council of Ministers to establish partnership between the European capitals of culture, individual entities bearing the European heritage label, and other European initiatives with Ukrainian towns and cities, heritage site, institution, and other creative entities. Initially on a political level, then after the war is over, on a level of physical transnational cooperation. I'm aware of the urgent need to resolve the current migration crisis and for correct, rational understanding of the current wave of European solidarity across all fields. We all do hope that the terrors of war will soon be over and that we can find peaceful resolution to this conflict through a dialogue. With this expression of hope, I wish everyone here many successful discussions and inspiring meetings at this year's conference, and I thank you once again for your unity and solidarity. Thank you for your attention.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, it's lovely to see you here in Prague. Welcome to this absolutely wonderful city, I think the most beautiful major city in Europe. When I first came here 4 years ago, I had little knowledge about Prague. With almost 40 years in the business, I had made no visit to Prague until I came here. And I had no really idea about the great tradition which is in these wonderful buildings. But I soon found out that the relatively small nation with 10 million people is closely related to its music history and opera tradition. Very much connected with composers like Dvořák and especially Smetana, which are considered as father of the modern Czech nation. We have these three fantastic historic opera buildings. This one was for 16 years led by the composer Alexander Zemlinsky, and especially in the 20s and the 30s had a very important place in European opera history. Of course, downstairs you all know the State Theatre, the Mozart Theatre, as you mentioned, Mr. Burian, where he came here, had a huge success with the Figaro, was invited back to have the world premiere of Don Giovanni and then later of La Clemenza di Tito. And then we have downstairs the Golden Chapel, as the Czech called it, a wonderful temple which was opened with Smetana's Libuše, opera directly linked to the Czech ancestral attempts to restore the Czech state and independence. So it's really a special, I think it's really worth to dig into the history of each one of these wonderful theaters. Our company today is a result of a merge done for more than 10 years ago of then two separate companies. We still have two orchestras, 120 musicians in each, two choruses, 60 singers in each, and the orchestra and the chorus of the National Theatre is playing in the National Theatre and the Estate Theatre, and the orchestra and the chorus of the State Opera are playing only in this building. Both orchestras are also serving as orchestra for our ballet company, which is performing in all three buildings. We have one ensemble of approximately 45 soloists on steady contract who are performing in all buildings. And in a normal season, we have around 8 new productions playing 35 different titles and more than 300 opera performances. I have the ambition to give each house a special and clear profile. The National Theatre should take care of the rich Czech tradition. We have recently had a premiere of the foremost national opera, Prodana Nevěsta, The Bartered Bride, and Janáček's Katia Kabanova. And we will next season premiere Jaromír Weinberger's Svanda Dudak, which was the most successful opera between the wars, premiered in the National Theatre in 1929. And then by the end of the next season, we will have a new production of Dvořák's last opera, Armida. The Estate Theatre has for the last seasons been reserved for Mozart's operas. We are co-producing a Da Ponte cycle with the National Theatre in Mannheim, which next season will be complete with a new Figaro, staged by the Czech Barbora Horakova, conducted by Julia Jones. In this house, we are performing the big romantic repertoire from the 19th century, this season with new productions of Rigoletto and Flying Dutchman, and coming season with the new productions of The Rosenkavalier and Cavalleria Rusticana Pagliacci. In the center for our programming is the project Musica Non Grata. It's a 4-year extensive program generously supported by the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which allow us to present music and operas by composers who were persecuted and many of them killed by the Nazis. This season we have presented a double bill of Kurt Weill, The Seven Deadly Sins, combined with Schönberg's Erwartung, an opera which was actually world premiered on this stage. And then in March we had a premiere of Franz Schreker's Der ferne Klang, which also was performed here under Zemlinsky as early as in 1920, and never since. Next season we will continue with Paul Abraham's Ball in Savoy in Czech language, and as mentioned, Svanda Dudak in the National Theatre, and then in February 23 we will have a premiere of Zemlinsky's comedy, Kleider machen Leute, staged by Jerzy Meinzen and conducted by Giedres Lekute. We are also collaborating with the opera in Ostrava on 2 projects, Hans Krasa's Verlobung in Traum and the 2 one-act operas by Viktor Ullmann, The Kaiser von Atlantis and The Zerbrochene Krug. And tonight you will be able to see one of the most spectacular opera written in the period, I believe, in the period of this first Czech Republic. It's Plameny, or Flammen, The Flame, by Erwin Schulhoff, and it will be played in the set you can see behind me. I would be surprised and even disappointed if not some of you would invite us for a guest performance after you have seen it tonight. I wish you a good conference and enjoy the performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Per, for your welcome to Prague and for the wonderful sunny weather that you have given us. I first visited the city almost 50 years ago for the opportunity of hearing all 8 of Smetana's operas in 1 week. And that was the occasion of my introduction both to the National Theatre and to this theatre, which in those days was known as the Smetana Theatre. I fell in love with the city then, and I have to say that every time I return, I feel my heart lift. There is something very special about this city, that even if the performances are not as good as you would ideally hope, you still think there's a lift in your step, and at least you can look forward to the beer afterwards. But actually, Per, last night's performance of Katja Kabanova was superb at the National Theatre, and we look forward very much to your discovery of Plameny this evening. I want to say no more myself at this moment, other than to welcome our keynote speaker, who is Lotte de Beer, for whom I have to say a huge thank you. Come forward, Lotte. Because she has traveled by train from Vienna today and has to travel by train back to Vienna this evening to be with you for a short time this afternoon. So please give a good welcome to Lotte de Beer.
I'm totally happy to stand, yes. Thank you so much for the introduction also. Nicholas asked me to come here and have a speech about how it is to prepare a new season, a first season, how to prepare a whole new idea of running an opera house. And I was thinking, what can I be saying here? I could, of course, explain how I want the Volksoper to be a real people's opera, and how I'm going to do everything to build bridges between the old and rather conservative audience that is already there and the future audience, or at least the people who are not coming right now, who I think might be very interested, and how we call that the bridges between nostalgia and utopia. Or I could be telling you about how we want the theater to be a house full of artists who create a home for as many different Viennese communities as possible, and where the paint is always wet, because theater is never finished, work in progress, where failure can happen, experiment, but also where we can comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. Or I could hold a whole speech about why I think that operetta is actually the genre for this day and age. You know, when the world is a dangerous place, what do you want? You want to come together, be embraced by poetic music, and laugh all together about the comic political situation, or about everything that hurts. But I thought, am I going to tell you about that? You guys are already doing this. You guys are already running theaters. And I'll be coming here like a kind of Pippi Longstockings. Oh, thank you. Like a kind of That's fine, thanks. Like a kind of Pippi Longstockings who says, oh, I've never done it, so I'm sure I'll be great at it. And that seemed so naive, because really all I have is dreams. But then I thought, Nicholas, that's probably why you asked me. Because it might be interesting to hear from someone who hasn't been disappointed yet, and who hasn't had to deal with cynicism and cancellations and bad reviews and corona, and who can still believe in her dreams. Because I think in a way that is our mission, right? To keep believing in fairy tales, to strive for utopia, even though we know we'll never get there. And so I was thinking back of the time when I really just heard that I can do this amazing job. And I started by collecting very interesting colleagues around me to become a transition team. A dramaturg, a designer, a young artist, a technical director, a light designer. People that I thought they should help me in this transition period, and also people who can keep me fresh and on my toes. And we started with the most amazing exchange of ideas and exchange of ideals. We were gonna do it. We were gonna rock the future of opera. And then every time that we had more Zoom meetings, every meeting, I noticed that we were starting to talk more pragmatically, that we were starting to think about abos, union agreements, butts on seats. We were starting to become pragmatic and cynical so fast, and we hadn't even started. So we discussed that, and we decided that in the everyday business of an opera house, you probably need to remind yourself to not lose that sense of dreaming, that sense of idealism. And that's why we decided that once a year we'll have a manifesto production. And that is a production in which we ask artists, a conductor, a team, to come and not just leave behind a production, but also leave behind a newly written manifesto. Manifesto that can be about anything, as long as it's about opera, music, theater in a kind of way. And not just do they write that, but we give them the tools to try things out, to experiment, to bring their theories into practice. And so we've brainstormed, what could it be, what could these questions be about? You know, so I guess it always has to do with what stories do we really want to tell? To who are we telling them? And with who are we doing that? How can we reach these people? Are there ways of communication that might be there and that we haven't found yet? How can we produce without destroying the planet quite as much as we do? How can we contribute to the local communities better? And how can they influence us? How can we listen to them? How can we keep making sure that spending state money is about much more than our own ambition? Which technical novelties can change the way that we plan and produce? Do we really need to keep building sets every time, or can we sometimes recycle or invite designers to use the space more site-specific? Can we ask different teams to communicate together and sometimes share? And a very practical one, if we have 121 trees and 350 walls in storage, wouldn't it be wise to show those first before we ask people to create new ones from scratch? And does that actually saw away the artistic freedom that we right now have? How do we include different perspectives than our own into the narrative? But also themes that are further away from the actual product. For instance, how do we create in this business a work-life balance? I mean, as a mother of a 4.5-year-old, I have no idea. I'm juggling it every day, and I'm failing. Is there a way that we can give parents the opportunity not to have to choose between being a good artist and being a good parent? Can we try to create a community in which life and art is more synchronized, like a big circus family that takes care of each other? Or a question, how does one create a healthy relationship with power in an industry where at the core of the matter there's one guy or one woman deciding when everybody else breathes? And, you know, is there a way to form a more democratic way of doing this art form, or will it become a hot mess? And I know it's naive, it's radical, it's unrealistic, but if we don't use our creative minds to think about these themes, then I'm really worried that bureaucracy will come in and do it for us and give us a straitjacket that doesn't help the art. So in this way, we'll invite the teams, and they can either pick out of these questions or bring completely new questions to the Opera House, speak with the audience, experiment with production ways, with rehearsal, surprise us, force us to change, and stimulate us to think about all these questions for hopefully way more than just these 6 weeks that they're there. In the very first season, we have Maurice Leenhart, a young director with a great team, who will do Dreigroschenoper and who will be thinking about the use of gender in theater, who will be experimenting, producing with recycling, and who will find new ways of communicating directly with the audience. And we're going to be surprised. And in the second season, I'm really happy to have Ray Smith, who calls herself a green designer and is busy in every project that she does to change the theater world, together with Lizenka Heibo-Castagnone, a young director who is revolutionizing how we work in opera houses by demanding that it's a collaborative process that takes 12 weeks instead of 6, where multi-perspective views come into a piece. I think it's going to be exciting. And I would love now to tell you how this worked and what we came up with and which manifestos were written, but of course I haven't started yet. So really the only thing that I do have are dreams. But since I do still, at this point, believe in my dreams, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a overview of our very first season. We will start with an operetta, Die du Barry. It's a Viennese operetta that had a rework in the 1930s in Berlin, Milleker and Makebe. And we're doing these two versions kind of together, mixed together. And Jan Philip Gloger has listened to my request of finding a Trojan horse to reach out to the existing audience who are shivering with fear how I will destroy Viennese operetta forever. And he has made a time travel, starting in today's world, going back to the 1930s Berlin, going back to 19th century Vienna, and arriving in 18th century France with the French Revolution coming up. So he has made a smart analysis with lots of lavish costumes. And then I will start as a director in this house. I didn't want to be the first one, I wanted to be the second one. Together with our new music director, Omar Meyer-Welber, and the Wiener Staatsballett, one of our partners, we wanted to have an artistic collaboration. André Kajdanovsky, great choreographer, and I will do a combination of the Nutcracker and Jolanta. Jolanta and the Nutcracker is the title, where we have taken bits and pieces of the opera and the ballet and made one piece of them, in which we tell the story of the phase in everybody's life where you have to decide if you keep being a blind princess or if you want to open your eyes up to the realism of the world. It's a coming-of-age story for all ages. Then comes this Dreigroschenoper, our first manifesto production, and then we've invited the British comedy group Spy Monkey, to work together with Alexandra Joel. Spy Monkey is a physical comedy group and one of the funniest people I've ever seen on a stage. And since I often am in music theater thinking, I know this should be funny, but I'm not laughing, I just wanted them to show us how funny music theater can be. So it's new for them because they've never done music theater. It's new for us because we're getting clownery. They've come for already 4 different workshops and will make Offenbach's Orpheus in der Unterwelt. Then I've commissioned a new operetta because I really want to invest in the genre. Moritz Eggert will write Die letzte Verschwörung, The Last Conspiracy, an operetta in which every conspiracy of the last 30 years turns out to be true. The world is flat, aliens are watching us, Bill Gates wants to indeed vaccinate us, and you have no idea what else, you don't even know, is also true. I will direct it again. And then we have this typical Spieloper, Die lustige Weiber von Windsor. Otto Nicolai, very Viennese, based on Shakespeare Falstaff, where we can really show off our beautiful new ensemble. And Nina Spijkers and Ray Smith will make a very funny feminist approach to this show together with Ben Glasberg. And then finally we end with Mozart, which I think a house like the Volksoper should always do, Die Entführung aus dem Sarai, with Nurkan Erpolat, a Turkish fantastic director who said, please give me Die Türkenoper, because I can say so much more about that than you guys all can. I would like to come back here after 5 years, Nicholas, to see what's come out of these dreams, whether cynicism has killed the Pippi Longstockings. I will let you know. Thank you very much.
She's already gone back to Vienna, I think. But if you haven't, thank you very much, Lotte. I think it's a fantastic program that you've invented for Volksoper Wien next season in rather a short time. And we hope that most of it is successful. It will be a marvelous place to visit, and I think it will be a way of regenerating the audience in Vienna. And I think that Lotte's personal approach to the task of becoming the new Intendantin in Volksoper Wien is a very good test case for what is the main theme of this conference, which is how do you program and how do you market and how do you present your project to both bring back audiences who have drifted away during the time of Corona and who need tempting back again into our theatres, and also how do you bring in new audiences? And are the two compatible or incompatible? And it's that discussion that we want now to continue with my panel of expert directors who I invite to join me up here on the stage. I'm not sure how many of you are here. I've seen Ignacio. I've had a WhatsApp from Martin Ajdari. He's here. Perfect. Is Alain Perroux here? Alain will join us in medias res. And André Kraft is here. Please come on stage. Thank you all very much for joining us. Alexandra Stampler-Brown, from Managing Director of Deutsche Oper am Rhein in Düsseldorf, Duisburg. Martin Ajdari, Deputy Director Adjoint, yes, of Opera Nationale de Paris. Ignacio Garcia-Belenguer, Director of Teatro in Madrid, and André Kraft, Head of Marketing and Communications at Komische Oper Berlin. All four successful big opera companies, and bringing with them a variety of experience, and I hope seeing these questions from a slightly different perspective. In advance of this, I sent them a short list of questions, which, the nature of our profession being what it is, probably only some of them have bothered to read. But it doesn't really matter whether they've read my prompts or not, because what I'm asking for this afternoon is an answer really from their perspectives to what is needed to regenerate audiences. And there are a number of basic questions like, is it your first task to bring back the old traditional audience, which has, for perfectly good health reasons, disappeared during the course of the last 2 years, and you are now trying to tempt back? Is that your first priority? Or is actually the opportunity to address a new audience what has been driving your thinking for the forthcoming years? And I think I would like to start with Ignacio, if only because he was probably the first theatre to reopen after the shutdown, and gallantly, through the summer of 2020 and thereafter, continued performing, initially to a more restricted audience, but eventually to full audiences. And when I last spoke to someone at Teatro Madrid, they said, oh, and I said, how are audiences? They said, well, 95 to 99% of capacity. And I thought, it's not too bad. So we have a success story here. I'm asking all of you not just to boast about your success stories. I want you, because we're among friends, to be honest and say what your concerns and fears are, both now and for the future. But Ignacio.
Okay, thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Jan, for organizing this conference. It's really a pleasure to be here. And taking the words that Nicolas has said, and listening to Lotte de Beer, I think that we have reason enough to be optimistic. And I think we are here together. We are organizing this conference. We have passed 2 horrible years. And if we think what many things have happened during the pandemic, and if we think the horrible war that we have now in Ukraine, and so on, I think that we have reason enough to be pessimistic. But thinking in the future, we have to be optimistic. I'm sure of it. I think that in these 2 years, we have learned a lot. We have learned to work together, to make a strong staff in our theaters. We have learned to fight against the circumstances. And also we have done a lot of things. I think that in case of Teatro, we opened it in July 21. And really it was a great challenge. But at the same time, we developed other kind of projects like the audiovisual projects that you have developed, or the e-learning platform that many of you have developed in your theaters. So taking the look after, in relation with the 2 years back, I think that we have learned things and we have done things, and we have enough reason to be feel proud of ourselves, to feel proud of the public administration that really helped us during the last 2 years, and to really support opera houses. It was a complicated years, but a complicated time, and the public administrators encouraged all of us to reopen the theaters as soon as possible. I think that we have to feel proud of the sponsors. Most of them, or many of them, they maintain the economical support. In some cases, even increase the economical support. And of course, we have to be proud of our audience. And that's the point. The audience is the reason that at that time we opened. Maybe it was, but we do not make a program for the audience. We make it because we think that the opera has to be alive. And the reason that we open is because the audience have to come. And the compromise of the audience coming to the theater with a mass, at the beginning with 55% of the audience, later on 75%, and at the end with that 99% of audience, is a reason to think that it's good what we done at that time, and it makes a compromise between the theater and the audience. And that is the reason of everything, the compromise that the staff of the opera house has to have with the audience, who, even under the circumstances, want to come to the opera, to enjoy the opera, and to be seated there to share with us a performance.
Ignacio, to what extent do you think that your insistence on continuing through the lockdown times was the reason for your success in keeping the dialogue with the audiences going? Because I remember talking to your marvelous head of sponsorship, Marisa, and she said it had been a really exciting period for her, but she'd been spending more time keeping contact with all the sponsors than she had pre-lockdown.
Yeah, sure. I think that when we decide to reopen the theater, we try to put in yourself in the position of the audience. Do they want to come to the theater? Do they want to come to enjoy the opera? And the answer was yes. So it's true that the legal situation, the law in Spain allow us to open quickly. We just be closed for 3 months. It was complicated to organize the main room with one seated occupied and one seated not occupied. It was complicated, but the audience understand what we try to do and answer bravely, coming to the theater and understanding that it was good to open, to maintain the opera alive. And I think that all of us are opera lovers, and understanding that and being part of the theater and coming to the theater instead of being at home was the reason that encouraged our people, our staff, our theater to be open.
I'd like to ask André to come in at this point, because it seems to me that Komische Oper Berlin has been particularly adept at keeping in touch with its audience by other means. Like a number of you, I'm on the emailing list of the Komische Oper, and I get almost weekly reminders by André of what brilliant production has come up, signed very cheerily, viel Spaß, André, at the end. And it seems to me that you, particularly, but of course the whole setup in Komische Oper, has been anxious to keep that dialogue going in a different way from Madrid, but in your own specifically Berliner way.
Okay, thank you. Let me think about it. of course, yes, we tried to hold contact to the people, and we did some special programs online and everything like that. But on the other hand side, there was a moment when we found out or thought, okay, now the people have other problems, and maybe you should leave them alone for some time. And this was then when we just moved backwards and waited. And I think this is what we have to do now as well. I'm very optimistic, as you are, and I think the audience will come back. But of course, if you couldn't see your best friends in the last 2 years, I don't think the first thing you do is to go into a dark room where you cannot talk for 6 hours and then go back home. The opera lovers are coming back, but the people who come and see our performances for other reasons, that will take time for them to do. You know, there are funerals to do, there are birthday parties to do, there are lots of family events to do, so we have to be patient. And I think what we try is to find a way to tell them, hello, we are still alive, and this is what we offer, but we don't want to push too much. So it's kind of this thing, what we try. And I think I'm completely convinced that the people will come back. I'm really very, very optimistic. On the other hand side, I think we have to learn from this pandemic and see how we can be more resilient for crises like that. And I think the answer is diversity. So you hear this from you over there. Hi. Thank you for the speech. To all the other places, we mixed up our audiences, and we cannot rely on one specific type of audience. So we have to find very different audiences for all the different pieces we are doing. And of course, the people have very different reasons to attend an opera, and we have to listen to them. And I'm happy that there are a lot of them coming because of the performance, but I'm also happy if they come just to see these fantastic venues. And this is, I think, what we have to do in the future. Listen to our audience and go on.
Can I just ask you numbers? Are you back to similar levels of capacity to 2019 yet?
No, not at all.
Roughly what?
No, I would say we are back to where we had 92 before the crisis, and now I think it's about 75. And it's the performances who are rare, performances who will not come back. These are the performances people attend. So Barry Kosky's All Singing, All Dancing Yiddish Revue is sold out because it's not coming back. The other performances are not. So the people are really picky. They are.
So second numbers question. How many performances are you planning for next season compared with the last full season?
Almost the same amount. It's a little bit less because we have to leave the house due to renovations. So the season will end 3 weeks before this season, but it's the same.
Otherwise, it looks in the brochure like a normal season.
No, it's more than that. It's 12 openings, 12 premieres. It's really like.
And are you budgeting on 75% or 90%?
The budgeting, it goes on 85%. So that is what we try to reach. Yes.
Okay, that's the optimistic end of the table. I'm relying on Alexandra as someone with a good business brain to join me on the realistic end. Alexandra, what is your reaction in Düsseldorf and in Duisburg to these questions of productivity and whether the traditional audience is returning to your theatre?
Yes, well, maybe I want to start answering your question with working out the differences that we all experience, because I remember more than 2 years ago when we were in Zoom network meetings that we all were facing at that point the crisis in a very similar way. We all had to close, we all were in lockdowns, but then especially this season I saw that we all came back to our way of working in a much different way, and so this recovery path I see is developing for everyone, for you, in a different way and in a different speed. And I can tell, even we feel differences or see differences between Düsseldorf and Duisburg, and this is just two cities about half an hour drive time away from each other. So maybe to start, from a business point of view, I think it's going to be, again, quite difficult to forecast and to guess your recovery path in terms of your landmarks that you have to achieve by certain points in your next season. I think as soon as the curve goes up steadily, then that's good, but I don't dare to say that we are back within 6 months or 9 months of the next season back to normal. And I think also for all of us, it's such a big difference if you are a house that's very reliant on tourists. If it's a house that you are the big cultural institution in your area, or if you have a big subscriber base, to which I want to get back to, or if your government communicated, and there I want to relate also to what you said, Ignacio, also to what we experienced in Berlin, of how the government dealt with the message out there, how dangerous it is to enjoy yourself or to go back and to enjoy community and some togetherness. Or if it was more focused on your self-responsibility, as, for example, in the Scandinavian countries we experienced. And therefore, your way back is probably quite different and sometimes harder. I would forecast for Germany that we have prolonged these measures for such a long time and have just lifted the last ones 3 weeks ago, which is like yesterday, that actually our recovery process will be probably a bit slower than in other countries, and that also affects the program. Going back to the business side, we are very reliant on our subscribers. They're a good share of our box office income, and they were not the first ones to come back. Interestingly, in this season, we experienced lots of new first-time buyers because the younger audience came, interestingly, and the older subscribers were very hesitant, and they're sitting on piles of vouchers. I don't know when they're going to hand them in, but I think that's also a business problem in a way, that we need to get our core audiences back as well, because yes, diversifying is always an aim, has always been an aim, but first of all, we also want to get our core audiences back, and also look at those new first-time buyers and see how we are getting them into our repertoire, into our new productions, and that will be, I think, an interesting task.
I mean, be honest, do you think you've lost some of the core audience forever?
Yes, to a certain extent, I think so. I just see that after 2 years, some people have cancelled their subscription, and they haven't got through this crisis very well. So I think we always had a few subscribers because of age, we lost them, but then new ones came. But I think we'll have a slight dip at the end of the day, and therefore it will be a huge challenge for us to actually compensate that with new audiences. Yes.
So the big question, which we will come to in a moment, is about how you replace that. But I think you will remember from Jan Burian's introduction, and he was very honest about it, and this theatre, the State Theatre, is traditionally highly reliant on tourist purchases. Less so the National Theatre with its concentration on the Czech repertory. But although there seem to be plenty of tourists in Prague today when I was wandering around, Jan assures me that there are whole sectors, particularly the Asians, who have not returned to Europe. They think we're in a war zone. There used to be a lot of Russians. And they're not, of course, they're not here. And what Jan was saying is they've taken the realistic solution, which is to cut back to about 2/3, 70% of their previous level of productivity. Admittedly, their previous level was extremely high. But even so, that's quite a big change. And my understanding from talking to certain other theatres is maybe more discreetly they have been, particularly with the less popular titles, cutting back the numbers of performances from 9 to 6 or whatever, in recognition of the fact that the core audience is not fully back. I'm coming to Paris last on this table, partly because in a world of big oil tankers, the Opera de Paris is probably the biggest tanker when it comes to trying to turn it round. And Martin is part of a team with a new director, Alexandra, who in one sense couldn't have arrived at a worse time, and in another sense arrived at a time when he could really make a difference. And I would be very interested, Martin, to hear how you have adjusted the steering on the tanker.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Well, that's a difficult question. First, I would like to say I perfectly agree. Maybe the microphone is not. Is it better so? Yeah, thank you. I perfectly agree with everything Ignacio said about the way we went through the crisis and the cohesion between staff, technical staff, artists, sponsors, and audiences. We had to close 6 months long, but we managed to maintain a relationship, a link to the audience, thanks to our video platform we launched at the end of December. It was a quick, decided launching, but it was successful. And it's also true that I arrived in the Paris Opera in difficult times. First, it was during the strikes, the very difficult strikes of winter 1920, and then it turned to the pandemic. The first thing I would like to say is that, to be very candid, the only thing we know is that we are really not sure about what we know. It's very difficult to interpret, to draw very decisive lessons from what we see. The current season is not a normal season. The pandemic is not really over. There is maybe a 7th wave coming, at least in France. So and we began the season with a level of subscription reduced by a half compared to previous level. We had only 100,000 seats sold in the 21-22 subscription campaign compared to more than 200,000 before. So the basis for our audience is a lot lower, and of course the basis of agents, tourists, and so on. And we see that in the figure. We have substantially less, a reduced number of tourists, and we also have people who have lost the habit to go out on the evening. On the whole, in the current season, the physical attendance is down by 10% compared to previous level. It's still 86%, so it's not so bad, but it's 10% less. In financial terms, it's more difficult. It's 20% less, 70% compared to 90%. 70% could be seen as something decent. But our break-even point is at 90%. So economically, it's very difficult for us to live with even with a 70% rate of occupancy in financial terms. What did we do to, what changes did we make? As regard the structure and nature of our programming and of the seasons, we were, with Alexandra, rather reluctant to change things too quickly because first of all, the diversity and the balance between, the very delicate balance between all genres and all types of opera and ballets in our season is directly linked to our public service missions, and we cannot change that so quickly. But the main reason is that we really don't know. We have to, of course, like everybody, to program 3 years in advance, and it's difficult to know 3 years in advance and to change the structure of our seasons, of our missions, without knowing what will be the situation in 3 years. So that is difficult. What we already did is to reduce the length of the series of some productions, especially for operatic productions, since we observe during the past few months a lower rate of occupancy for opera productions, especially opera production considered as demanding, long operas, less famous operas, where we are close to 50%, 45-50% compared to more popular works like Don Giovanni, for instance, or Il Barbiere presently, who reach 90% rates. And the ballet performances are all completely sold out. So we don't know exactly what will work in 2 or 3 years. We observe that for some operas it's difficult to maintain long series, and so we decided for the next season to reduce the length of some series, but it's a very small change just to improve the economic balance. On the whole, we didn't change the structural balance between all genres in our programming.
What is the current relationship between opera and ballet performances, roughly?
Excuse me?
I mean, what percentage of performances are opera and what percentage ballet?
It's close to half each now. Traditionally, there were more, let's say 200 performances between Bastille and Garnier, 200 performances for opera and 160 for ballet. The opera will be down by 10 performances.
But
and ballet
would you consider altering that?
I think now it's
given that the ballet company probably has the capacity.
Yes, it's the balance we have reached for 3-4 years, while increasing the number of ballet performances. Maybe on a strict economic point of view, we should perhaps go further with ballet productions, but maybe it wouldn't be the same public service mission. You know, we have to be very cautious with that.
We might ask you this question in some of the breakouts tomorrow, just to get a sort of feel for it, because you are not the only theatre that has told me that the audience for the ballet is more resilient than the audience for opera. Do you think that has anything to do with the relative pricing?
We don't know. We didn't try to go further in prices, but the fact is that at least the highest prices for ballet have been risen by 50% over the past decade. So it's already a lot more expensive than it was, and the prices are relatively high now, and there's still the demand still exceeds the supply. So I'm not sure it is that relevant. What is noteworthy is that the contemporary as well as classical ballet is sold out. all productions. So maybe the ballet is more visual, but is more entertaining. Maybe in those times it's something that counts compared to more demanding operas, for instance. That can be a reason. Is it a reason for changing our seasons in the future? I'm not sure. On strict economic grounds, we should perhaps make it, but I'm not sure it would be a good reason because the diversity of the programming is part of our identity, and we should stick to it, I think.
I don't want to be boring about price, but can I ask our two German representatives whether they think that price is a deterrent to new audiences, which you presumably want not only to fill seats vacated by past audiences, but also to regenerate your public. Now, ticket prices in Berlin or Düsseldorf, well, certainly to someone who lives in London, seem remarkably reasonable. But is that a factor at all?
I can tell about Düsseldorf and Duisburg now that we had very high box office average income because we had full price ticket buyers because these new audiences are willing to pay the full price, interestingly. And yes, we are at a relatively low level, but the price, I think, was not now a motivation not to go. And I think people didn't spend so much money in the last 2 years for entertainment or going out anyway, and you could just see that people are spending lots on going out in restaurants and so on. So I think the price right now was not so much the issue of coming back to us, but I think it will be interesting and challenging to think about new packages that we are going to design around these new audiences, where maybe then if they come 2 or 3 times or 4 times a year, that maybe then price matters. So it doesn't have to be like a 50% reduction, but maybe some sort of incentive.
I think the price is not the most important thing in Germany. The people have saved a lot of money, and they have a lot of vouchers to use. So I think this is one thing. And at the end of the day, I think it's about the experience itself. If it's worth it, they come. If they don't think it's worth it, they don't come. And funny enough, I think they are less price sensitive than, I say, even if we are 3, 4, 5 different generations, but there are not so many people under 30 here. So the young people are not price sensitive at all. It's so interesting. We used the time of the pandemic to create an offer for all opera houses and concert halls and symphony orchestras in Berlin together for people under 30, an app. And we asked the people, so they can book via this app, they can book tickets for all the venues in Berlin that do classical music over different ticket systems, and they don't recognize it. I'm very proud of it. And we asked them beforehand, would you pay more if you are sure that you get a seat? So normally we had an old system where you buy a card for a year, and then you come at the evening, and if there are seats available, they get an opera for 10 euros. And we asked them, would you pay more if the seat is secure? And they say yes. So now they pay 15 euros for a seat. And if they bring someone who has not these opera card, they pay 20 euros for this person. And if they bring their grandmother, they pay the full price on top. I think for them it's the experience, and this is what we have to take care of. We have to take care of that the experience is superb, like it is if you go to a 1-star restaurant. Young people go to this incredible expensive restaurants. They seek for experiences. And I think we have to make every evening a fantastic experience, and they will come back, I'm sure.
May I just add something to your point about the experience? I think what we also saw is that we live in such a complex ecology when we try to open up again, that it's also our surrounding, the before and after what you do, how you get to us, that was also slowly and in different stages opening up. And I think that influenced also a lot if people were willing to come back and leave their living room, because we had just lots of hurdles until recently, because people say, I just don't want to go into full trams or public transport, or I want to go out for restaurants, but the restaurants were not fully open yet, or you had different corona restrictions going into a restaurant than in a theater. So it was just rather complicated to plan a whole evening's experience. And what we saw is that it's not just only us with our offer in the theater, and yes, we were also struggling with our own catering for intervals, because the whole issue with masks and with vouchers, you only were allowed a limited amount of people in your bar area. This was such a hassle. And I think if we manage next year to get a stable surrounding and this whole experience much more secure, that we say, hey, we are there, we are not only playing fantastic opera and ballet, but we also give you a whole experience that's safe, and that's from leaving your house until coming back home, is something that we have to work on. And I think maybe we have to also think about the network and also the city council, how they can help us in making that experience a better experience as a whole.
My inclination is to agree with you and to agree with André that what matters is the experience, and if it is, you will somehow go through rain and sleet in order to get it and pay what's on the ticket. Nonetheless, examples that you have given of the percentage attendance and then percentage cash taken, the difference is proof that discounting is going on. Now, I know that none of us ever admit to discounting because it's very bad marketing to do so, but it's a perfectly legitimate way of selling produce, and why shouldn't you do it? And I want, in a way, to get away from it, because I think it's not the major issue, although I think probably those who are holding budgets are finding the whole discounting process a little bit alarming at the moment. Now, it may be, as Alexandra says, that by next year, although COVID won't have disappeared, people will have learned to live with it enough to return to their normal lives of going to restaurants and even going to the theatre.
But maybe if I can add a point, the problem with discounts when the rooms are empty or half empty is that you undermine the perception of scarcity of the room, and for the subscription, the idea that there is a scarcity is very, very important. So we are going to lose, if we had to make too many discounts in the coming months, we're going to lose that perception, and we see that in the subscription process for 22-23. It's already there. We see that most of our traditional audiences, some of them have received promotions, discounts, and they think, why should I hurry? I just have to wait, and maybe next year it will be the same. So that's the first difficulty, and paradoxically, we also have to take that opportunity to prove to all the other, to the new audiences, those who think that the opera houses are always full, but they are not full, and we have to go to them, since until now we wait to see if the room is empty or not. If it's half empty, then we make discounts, but we make discounts only to our traditional audiences and not to the others, because they are more difficult to reach. So that's an opportunity, because there are rooms, there are seats, but it's to us to go to those new audiences and find a way to reach them.
Martin, do you want to speak about some of your schemes to bring in new audiences? Because in a way, the most interesting thing about this, look, let me let you into a secret. This, the theme of this conference was going to be reclaiming audiences. And it was Guy Colin, I think, who said that's completely the wrong title. You should say regenerating audiences. And it was an important difference between shall we get back all those frightened people who are worried about crossing the road in case they catch COVID, to how do we make our audiences more representative of the society in which we live, more inclusive, and so on. And is this crisis of the last 2 years not a fantastic opportunity to do that?
I guess you asked me the question because we launched in Paris a reflection on the diversity, the representation of the diversity of society in the repertoire, on the stage, and in our staff as well. Well, I think obviously we have to show to all components of the society that the opera house is their house, that they are the place there, so that the repertoire, the way it's presented, mustn't offend them. It must also represent their diversity. I think it's a long-term process. It's more a process to legitimate, like what we do for sustainable development. There are actions to legitimate the opera houses in the long term, to show that are not destroying resources for the planet, and they are taking into account the changes in the society. It won't help us to regain our audience within 1 or 2 seasons. But in the long run, it's absolutely necessary, I guess. And it's about the repertoire, whiteness in the classical ballet, for instance. It's about the characters on stage, and that's something very interesting. We, of course, and Alexandra is very clear on that point. We don't want to eliminate any part of the repertoire, but we want to work, to discuss on it, to see how people in the theaters can feel they are at home, they are represented on stage, and that's a very exciting process, but it's a very long-term one.
So do any or all of you think that the repertoire will change in order to speak to different audiences? Look, I don't want to anticipate the presentation we're going to make tomorrow, which has some figures and facts about it. But I will say one thing. I was really quite surprised in the survey we sent out how many of our companies said, oh, it should be back to normal again by 22, 23. No, we don't expect any changes in programming or numbers of people employed, and we expect to be back to full capacity, and get rid of all that horrible streaming and you know, diversions like that. And I thought, what a complacent bunch of theatres we have in Opera Europa. And there must be some who are actually thinking, I wonder whether this is my opportunity to make a few changes.
You mean 90 minutes operas? I think the program is always changing, so I'm happy about that. And we always have to adapt. The times are always changing, and the people are looking always for something different. And I think it's not so special. I think maybe, hopefully, from the marketing perspective, we have more intervals. So, because I heard that from your colleague, and from my colleague in Madrid, they, if the performance has an interval, they sell 5% more tickets because of the interval. Can you imagine? We at the marketing departments know this for years, but no one heard us. so please hear us, and you will get more audience.
I think this is... I have to warn you that Prague National Opera's Garcia-Belenguer is played straight through without a break.
Well, it's not very long, isn't it?
I don't think it would have got past André. You'd have had 2 intervals, wouldn't you?
No, I think of course, everything will change, and I'm go back to the optimistic thing. Everything will change, and it always changed. So if we will not have more tourists coming back, we have to find another way to find different audience in our cities. And if the tourist comes from different countries, of course, we have to do the surtitles in different languages. And this is always the thing. We never relied on the public we had, on the audience we had. We are always searching for new audiences. And maybe we should do this more serious now, but I think in general...
It's an unfair question, André, because of course 10 years ago, the arrival of Barikowski did give a shift.
Yes, the programming changed.
To the repertory, and that in turn gave a shift upwards to the box office returns. Now that he is departing, admittedly with quite a long legacy, is this...
Well, I tell you a secret, he comes back twice a year with the new productions, so I'm very happy about this. And yes, of course, at the end of the day, it's never marketing, it's always good productions on stage.
Yep.
And this is, I think, this is what we have to work on.
Which was one of the interesting things about what Lotte de Beer had to say. And, of course, the choices she's made of programming are, in one sense, personal choices, of preferences and things she wants to do, but in another sense, they're very much, how do I speak to the audience in Vienna?
Of course, and they are more sensible than before. That's true.
Alexandra.
I was also a little bit surprised by hearing that there's so little change ahead of us, probably. But I think that's also because we are now catching up with productions that we couldn't see over the last 2 years, or they were already half produced or built, and now come the premiere in the season 22-23, if there isn't a change in artistic leadership. So I think this coming season is still a kind of a catching up season of half-ready or already scheduled productions where you had contracts with leading teams that now couldn't be performed in the last 2 seasons. But I do think that everybody of us is thinking of the season after now, and because we might have now kind of an umbrella, a shelter for one season ahead of us where maybe our big funders are not challenging us too much yet, because everybody knows it's a hard way back and it's going to be a long way back. But I think it will be crucial of what we're going to do the following season from 23 following. And I think many theaters are thinking about changes, and especially also how we communicate our offer, because if we are reliant on more new audiences, then we also have to maybe package it in a different way. So I think it's not just yet there because we're catching up, but I think it's coming, yes.
I think we are looking ahead, and this is in a way the purpose of the discussion that we'll be having tomorrow. It's not, of course, Martin is right, that you inherit a program. A lot of you have inherited not only the program for next season, but 18 months worth of cancelled productions, which somehow you've got to fit in, and which you've already paid for. So it will be a time, but the question, I think, which is interesting for us to share knowledge and experience about, is whether this experience of the last 2 years will make one think differently about programming, about audience development and all those things in 2024, 25 and so on, isn't it? But look, you don't have to worry, Ignacio, you're already on 99%. But are you worrying?
I agree with Andrew about the repertoire is changing each time. I think that when the artistic director design a season, he or she has an idea and a storytelling, and it doesn't matter if it is 5 operas from the 90s or the 20 or the 21. It's an idea and a storytelling that he wants or she wants to communicate the audience. So makes a whole program thinking in what he wants or she wants to communicate to the people. So it changes each time, and I'm sure it's going to change in the next season, 22, 23, or whatever, because life, it changes, the world is changing, and the thing that the theater or the opera house wants to communicate is different each year. So he changed the program because the artistic directors, want to communicate a new idea, a new project, a new situation, or whatever.
Yes, no, I think the idea is not to be complacent and to do nothing. It's just no season is the same like the former. And we have to communicate and to find story to tell about each production. Maybe where we must be less complacent is we cannot just wait for the audience to come and for the traditional audience to come back. We must go to reach all audiences, the traditional ones who maybe come less, stay home, watch Netflix, I don't know, or the new ones, and tell them stories, know them better, gather data on the social networks with all new tools that are now available or will be available. That's strategically what is at stake, not necessarily changing the season, less opera, more popular operas, more ballets. I don't know. What is strategically necessary is to find a way to reach people, to go to them, and not to wait for them to come. That's the main point. And innovation gives us tools to do that. So that's the main exciting challenge for the years to come.
May I ask you all about the spectre of digital? Teatro Real, Paris too, have invested quite a lot of money in making their product available digitally, streaming, and in cinemas or television or whatever, with considerable success in terms of reaching audiences. And so has Deutsche Oper, Komische Oper.
Deutsche Oper as well.
And Deutsche Oper, yeah. And Deutsche Oper am Rhein is a good contributing member of Opera Vision. You've all been doing it, and without doubt have been reaching new audiences, not necessarily for all 3 hours of the opera, but you know, for reasonable amounts of opera. Do you think, well, let me put it in a strong way. One of our companies wrote in reply to the thing, there has been much too much opera online during the last 2 years, and we're determined to stop it from next season. While admitting that it had been a useful way of keeping in touch with the audiences, but it was very much temporary sticking plaster for them. Clearly you don't think that in Madrid or Paris or Berlin. You've used it very cleverly and effectively. Is it part of your strategy for capturing audiences for the future? Is it complementary, or, and again, let's be honest, is it actually bleeding audiences away?
Well, every new technique that comes out gives different options. Yeah, for example, if you have a production where a telephone with a cord is on stage and you use this nowadays, you have to be sure that the people understand what this is. And of course, I think every new technique that came out brought us different things. Photography is something different from painting, and film is something different from TV, and streaming is something completely different from live performances. So even then, but what I think online performances will succeed if they are treated as a different art form and not just as filming what is on stage. I think this is what we have to think about. New formats, a completely different way of how to present a production, how to produce a production. And it's happening, you know, if you look at the esports world, or if you look at all the gaming that's going on, they created a completely new world with this new technology. The only idea we have is to film what is on stage. This is not the future. When we find a way to make art happen in a digital way, then we will have a future in filming or in showing operas online. That's my opinion. And of course, we will use all these new channels to communicate. You know, we used fax machines to communicate, but now no one has one, so we shouldn't use them anymore and change to the next. And Facebook is not gone, but will be gone soon, so we have to go to TikTok. I mean, this is a normal process, and yeah, that's what I think about it.
Okay, I think that the digitalization or the technological development is strategic, completely strategic. In case of Teatro Real, we approved last year the strategic plan for the next 5 years, and one of the most relevant points was the development of the technological part of Teatro Real with my opera player. So we think that the technology is part of our life. We have a smartphone, we use Netflix, HBO, and it's part of our life. And when we think that, talking back with the audience, when we think that we want to make bridges with young people, the best way to do it is with the technological development. They are technological. They are a new generation. They think the other way that we do, because they are always thinking on how to develop the technological part of their lives. So if we want to keep alive the opera, and if we want to be in touch with the young people, we have to have a technological channel to communicate with this new audience. So filming the sports is the same. You can go to the stadium to see a football match, but and you can come to the opera, but it's not one against the other. It's a complementary experience that people who can come to the opera and people who prefer to stay at home watching an opera, playing an opera, or just relaxing with an opera, or just watching half of an opera. And I think that this kind of offer to the public, to the audience, we have to offer the theaters for the people.
So I agree, of course. There are two things. The filming operas or ballet on stage is something. You have to learn how to film it properly. It's a work in itself. An audiovisual work, the filming of an opera is a work, a different work than the ballet or the opera itself. But it will never be a substitute neither to the experience or for the audience, or commercially or economically. There is no real business model for, I think we can agree on that, for opera online, full-length productions recorded, but still we have to do it. It's a service. It's an absolutely necessary service to offer to our audience, the audience that are in our towns, but also elsewhere in the country, in the world, and we cannot do without it. even knowing that it won't complete our business model or directly replace the missing spectators in the theaters. That's the first point. Then you have original digital contents, and that's something new. We can innovate. You can try with XR, with all kind of formats that new audience could like to see, and that would be way to reach new audiences. Whereas records of opera online is not, in my view, a way to reach a new audience. It's a very good tool to reach and communicate toward traditional or people who already know the genre, but not for newcomers. But with new formats, you can also try. We try. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes it works. There were tries with the 3D. 10 years ago, it never works because it was too technologically and economically too complex. We have to try with XR, VR, and all those things. Maybe NFTs as a way to communicate toward new audiences, and we must do that. And on the top of that there's also what I said about the digital tools for marketing, for data gathering, and of course, if you provide the audience with digital content, innovative content, then you will have more viewers online, on social media, and then you will have more knowledge about them, and you can make use of that knowledge to regain or to regain new audiences, and that's part of the strategy. It's of course a long-term one. It's a difficult one, but that's more that kind of vision that we have.
I agree that I think it's in addition to all our audience development strategy that we are using now digital formats. And what I want to add here, like for us as a company, it was extremely valuable to be part of Opera Vision. And yes, we are not streaming that often and that much as you do. But what we have gathered is a lot of know-how within our own organization to produce much more footage, film, background information that we now use in different ways. So I think that's also very important that we use different ways of communicating and also educating our audience. And we have started almost 2 years ago a project called the Digital Foyer, which is now coming live with some activities in our foyer that we are going to set up as of autumn, and this is going to be something fun, so people can engage in digital way with us and learn about opera, learn about ballet, and I think by having now these new audiences in, you also have to engage with them a different way and not just sell them a program book. So we also have an app now, an opera app, where you can look from outside in. So you stand in front of our building, and we have certain points on the building where you get then inside information, backstage information about what's on, with just small clippets that we are now able to produce much quicker than a few years ago, and we are much more agile. And I think that's what we have learned over the last 2 years. That's what we are taking on, and it's this augmented reality that we are experimenting with next year within a production with our partner, a big mobile phone provider in Düsseldorf, where we want to try out something first, very first, and so we are just trying to add to the experience, and streaming is something that brought us to this extra add-on that we are now, that's part of our core, not just hanging posters or printing flyers. And I think that has been a big learning curve for all of us.
I mean, I suppose one of the things one can say is the last 2 years have accelerated the learning process of how to use it in a beneficial way. I mean, certainly, those of us involved in Opera Vision see it absolutely as complementary and not as a replacement. It's always been our ethos. I mean, we wouldn't have invented Opera Vision if we thought it was going to turn people off going to the opera and the theatre. And those of you who'd like to follow this line of thinking a bit further, there is a Opera Vision Next Generation session on Friday morning at 10:30, at which some of our new ideas will be put forward, and where we will be very pleased to hear your ideas about how it can be done better. Nonetheless, I think we should be aware of the threat. And of course, the big elephant is the Met, which has used filming and showing those very well-made films in the cinema as a tool for brand awareness. And as a result, worldwide, the Met is better known than any other opera company. And it's been a fantastic success and brilliantly done. Except that ticket sales in Lincoln Center have plummeted. Last autumn, Boris Godunov played to 45%, Meistersinger 50%. Yeah, and if you live in New Jersey, wouldn't it be nicer to spend $25 seeing it in the comfort of your own home with a can of lager than coping with the traffic and going into Lincoln Center and paying $250?
But we have to be very careful because New York is really down. That's ground zero. Every second shop is closed. I mean, it's not really. I don't know if the conclusion is right that because of them streaming or showing it in the theaters, the people are not coming. I'm not 100% positive about that. But what I think is, it's only a handful opera houses who can make money with it. You know, we cannot make. Not every opera house here in this room can make money. It's not a business model, as you said, the streaming at all. It's awareness, it's reaching out, it's 15 minutes. The people watch our productions online, so it's like a trailer. And hopefully...
I'm not meaning at all to criticize the Met, who I think have done a brilliant job of doing it. It's simply to say that it is possible to create a Frankenstein monster which eats you.
Don't think so. I think the people want to see us live, really.
And I think we should be aware of it. I mean, the lesson to me is, and I'm now thinking again, 2024, 25, rather than next autumn, is how we combine our strategy for digital with our strategy for marketing, with our strategy for programming. And I think in trying to come up over the next 2 days with some kind of answers about how to regenerate audiences, we can't ignore it.
But if we can't ignore it, we have to shift the budgets. I mean, that is the thing. You know, if it's an additional thing, and if you really take it serious, you have to shift the budgets and make 1 or 2 productions less to do the digital one very good. And this is, I think this is all our problem. We don't want to produce less, only to add something digital, but the price is it. If you,
one should be more selective.
Yes, and you know, looking at the gaming industry again. I'm sorry, I talk too much, but I stop in a second.
I apologize.
But you know, if you are a composer, a contemporary composer, you make money with doing music for games, and maybe you get a contract from an opera company as well. And you know, this is the reality that we have to face, and it has to be a good game. So you have to put a lot of money in there, and if you want to have a success like that, you have to put a lot of money in there and have a good idea to compete with that. I think that is...
First you've got to raise the money or take it from something else. The problem of every finance minister in the world at the moment. I want to give each of you an opportunity of a short au revoir. But I just would like to say to all of you who've been patiently listening to us rather than participating, that our idea tomorrow morning in a slightly more intimate space than this lovely auditorium of the State Theatre, upstairs in the chorus room, I think, where we can see each other's faces. Audrey and my idea is that we start by giving you a swift presentation of the results of the survey that we have conducted. So we can actually base the discussion on some facts and figures and some contrasting views about this whole question of regenerating audiences and how big the problem is and how you know, whether digital matters or not. And I hope that won't take very long. And we then have another lovely expert panel, including representatives of those who undertook the longer survey, and who may wish to reveal themselves, or they may wish to hide behind anonymity. But then we break out into 4 different sessions in parallel with a moderator, and the hope is that all of you will then have the opportunity of digging in and taking part in a way that you can't, I know, in these opening sessions where one sits on a platform with a large fosse in between us. Final thoughts, Alexandra.
Well, I was really impressed by the presentation from Lotte de Beer. Thank you very much. And I really want to connect to that again, that you said that rock the future of opera and strive for utopia and keep believing. And I think that's what we need now, and that's we need as a motivation for the beginning of the next season. And I think what we also have learned that we want to have transformation by design and not by disaster. We had so much disaster in we have managed, you know, but I think now we just have to go into a modus where you have continuous development on that, what we have just learned. And yes, it will probably be still a little bit of both, but I hope that we can shift very soon again into this transformation by design modus where we as organization can develop and get more sustainable.
Marta. Yes, thank you. Maybe I could just say that there is really nothing very new in the changes and challenges we are facing. They are just perhaps more urgent. Things have accelerated, but the pandemic just had an acceleration effect on changes that are already there as regards the abundance of entertainment and the choice that people have and what it means for us to reach to them. So it's more urgent, and we got assets, we got the quality of our productions. I also was enthusiastic by the speech of Lotte de Beer, and it's about dreams and about creativity. We also have enthusiastic audiences in our theaters. Since the beginning of this season, the audience reacts even more enthusiastically than before, in our view, and that's really something that can make us confident as well as determined to change.
Ignacio, and apologies, I've just occurred to me that when I introduced you, I got your last name wrong. It's Laita.
It's okay. Okay, thank you very much. Just one thing, I think that it has been a very interesting debate about audience, about technological development and so on, but I think that in the future we will have another word on this table that is sustainability. I think that's now we are talking about the technological development, and we are talking about how do we face this technological development. I'm sure that in the next few years, maybe 1, maybe 2, no more than 3, we will be all of us talking about sustainability in the opera. the circular economy, and so I think that part of the future will be when we start thinking in green energy, in sustainability, and so on.
Thank you. André, we all want you as our marketing director.
God. I think I cannot take compliments, I'm sorry. I cannot deal with them is the right expression, right? Okay. I think the problem with humanity, oh my God, the problem with humanity is we only learn through crises. And it would be nice if it would be not like that, but I think the only changes, the real changes are coming with crises. And I see for this pandemic that maybe we learned not to be so high-nosed or arrogant about our industry, and to learn that we cannot take anything for granted. And let's go on with this, and then we will always have sold out places and auditoriums like this.
And the purpose of Opera Europa is that we should learn from each other. We need to vacate this theatre because they've got to get it ready for tonight's performance. So, see you back here in slightly under 2 hours.